The disco dynamos rise again. The bell rang, signaling the start of another dull day at Springville Middle School. Max trudged through the crowded hallway, his backpack slumped over one shoulder. As he navigated through a sea of unfamiliar faces, he had always felt like an outsider among his peers, never quite fitting in with the cool kids who dominated the social scene. But Max didn't let that bother him. He had his own interests and passions, and music was at the top of the list. As he walked to his locker, the sound of lockers slamming and chatter filled the air. But Max's mind wandered to his favorite topic, music. He spent most of his free time listening to vinyl records in his room, exploring different genres and eras. His friends might think he was weird for loving cold people's music, but Max didn't care. There was something about the warmth and character analog sound that drew him in. After grabbing his books for his next class, Max headed to his favorite hangout spot, the school library. Among the dusty shelves and forgotten textbooks, Max had discovered a hidden treasure trove of music, related books and magazines. He spent hours devouring articles about legendary musicians, reading interviews with iconic producers, and studying album artwork. As he browsed through the latest issue of Rolling Stone, an article caught his eye. The resurgence of disco. The words seemed to leap off the page, igniting a spark within him. Max had always been fascinated by the flashy album covers and infectious beats of 1970s disco. He spent the rest of his lunch break reading about the genre's heyday, imagining himself on stage, surrounded by glittering lights and dancing crowds. The final bell rang, signaling the end of the school day. Max gathered his belongings and headed out into the bright sunlight, feeling a sense of restlessness wash over him. He needed to share his newfound excitement with someone, anyone who would listen. As he walked home, Max spotted his best friend Jake, waiting for him by the bus stop. "Dude, I just read this amazing article about disco music," Max exclaimed, hardly able to contain himself. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Disco? Really? That's so old." Max didn't let Jake's skepticism deter him. He launched into a passionate speech about the genre's innovative production techniques, iconic fashion sense, and unforgettable hooks. Jake listened intently, his expression slowly transforming from confusion to curiosity. "You know what? That actually sounds kind of cool," Jake said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Max grinned triumphantly. "I knew you'd see it my way. We should totally start a disco band." Jake's eyes widened in surprise. "A disco band? Are you serious?" Max nodded vigorously, already envisioning the flashing lights and pulsating beats. "Why not? It'll be epic. We can call ourselves the Disco Dynamos." Max's enthusiasm was contagious, and Jake couldn't help but get swept up in his friend's excitement. "Okay, fine," Jake said with a chuckle. "But if we're going to start a disco band, we need to do it right." The two friends spent the rest of the afternoon brainstorming names, logos, and song ideas for their fledgling group. As they sat on Max's front porch, tossing around ideas like a game of musical catch, they stumbled upon the perfect name: the Funky Falcons. The next day, Max and Jake began recruiting members for their new band. They approached Emma, the school's resident music whiz, who agreed to join as lead keyboardist. Then there was Carlos, the star soccer player with a secret passion for drums. And finally, they convinced Samantha, the school's most talented singer, to join as their lead vocalist. The Funky Falcons were born, and Max couldn't wait to share their music with the world. They spent every spare moment practicing, perfecting their disco moves and harmonies. As word of the band spread, they started receiving offers to perform at school events and local parties. Their first gig was a nerve-wracking experience, but as soon as Samantha belted out the opening lyrics to "I Will Survive," the crowd was entranced. Max's mom, beaming with pride, danced in the front row, waving a homemade sign that read, "Funky Falcons Forever." The band's popularity snowballed, and soon they were playing sold-out shows at the local community center. Rivalries emerged as other bands began to take notice of the Funky Falcons' success. But Max remained focused on their music, pouring his heart into every performance. As the town's annual festival approached, the Funky Falcons received an offer to perform on the main stage. It was a dream come true for Max and his friends, but little did they know, disaster was lurking in the shadows. The day of the town festival arrived, and the Funky Falcons were buzzing with excitement. They had spent weeks rehearsing their set list, perfecting their choreography, and fine-tuning their disco moves. As they arrived at the festival grounds, Max's eyes widened in awe. The main stage was massive, with a sea of expectant faces stretching out as far as he could see. The band took to the stage, adjusting their sparkly outfits and giving each other last-minute high fives. But just as they were about to launch into their first song, disaster struck. Their equipment was nowhere to be found. "What's going on?" Max frantically asked the festival organizers, his heart sinking with every passing second. A rival band, the Electric Storm, sneered from the sidelines, clearly responsible for the sabotage. Max knew he had to think fast due to the crowd was growing restless, and their time slot was ticking away. Guys, we need a plan and Odo. Max shouted to his bandmates, his mind racing with ideas. Jake, ever the quick thinker, spotted a nearby karaoke booth and sprinted towards it. I've got an idea, he yelled back to Max, waving a microphone in the air. Max's eyes lit up as Jake explained his plan. They would perform an impromptu acoustic set, using the karaoke equipment to get their music out to the crowd. The Funky Falcons scrambled into action, grabbing instruments and rushing towards the karaoke booth. With seconds to spare, Max counted them as a 1, 2, 3. The band launched into a blistering acoustic rendition of "Stayin' Alive," their music echoing across the festival grounds as they danced and sang with every ounce of energy they possessed. The crowd, initially bewildered by the sudden change in plans, began to get swept up in the Funky Falcons' infectious energy. They started dancing, singing along to the familiar disco beats, and waving their arms in the air. It was pandemonium. Max and his friends fed off the crowd's enthusiasm, pouring every last drop of passion into their performance. As they finished their final song, the crowd erupted into cheers and applause, whistling and stamping their feet for more. The Funky Falcons took a triumphant bow, grinning from ear to ear as they basked in the adoration of the crowd. It was clear, despite the setbacks and sabotage, the Funky Falcons had truly earned their place as the town's hottest new act. The days following their triumphant performance at the town festival were a whirlwind of excitement and activity. The Funky Falcons became local celebrities, with kids of all ages looking up to them as heroes. They started receiving fan mail, requests for autographs, and even had a few girls asking for their phone numbers. Much to Max's embarrassment, the band members were on cloud 9, basking in the adoration of their peers and enjoying every moment of their newfound fame. But amidst all the chaos, they didn't forget about their music. They started working on new songs, incorporating modern styles and themes into their disco sound. Jake came up with a catchy hook for a song called "Disco Revival," which quickly became the band's anthem. Emma, the band's resident tech whiz, helped them set up a home studio where they could record and produce their own music. And Max, ever the driving force behind the band, made sure they stayed focused on their goal, to make the Funky Falcons a household name. Months of hard work paid off when the Funky Falcons finally released their debut single, "Disco Revival." The song shot up the charts, becoming an instant hit among kids and adults alike. The band performed on TV shows, radio stations, and even landed a few high-profile gigs at popular music venues. The night of their biggest show-to-date arrived, and the Funky Falcons took to the stage at the town's iconic venue, the Disco Dome. The crowd was electric, packed with screaming fans waving glow sticks and wearing disco-themed costumes. Max looked out at the sea of smiling faces, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. "This is it, Jutoji, we did it," Max exclaimed to his bandmates as they launched into their hit single. The music pulsed through the venue, a kaleidoscope of lights and colors swirling around them as they performed with every ounce of energy they possessed. As the confetti settled, the Funky Falcons took a final bow, beaming with pride and exhaustion. Max looked out at the crowd, knowing that cheesy disco music had brought them all together, and that this was just the beginning of an incredible journey.
Thank